You wake up in silk sheets with nothing pressing against your back but the softness of luxury. Your closet is full, your fridge is stocked, your bank account breathes easier than most people ever will. And yet, there it is. That quiet ache, that silent, insidious emptiness that no amount of comfort seems able to soothe. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It hums beneath your routines. It lingers after the applause. It waits for you in the quiet, in the pauses, between texts, after the parties, behind the smile you've learned to perform with precision. You were told this was the dream to achieve, to acquire, to ascend. And you did. But now you stare into the mirror and wonder, why do I feel nothing? The tragedy is not that you feel empty. The tragedy is that you were taught to expect fulfillment from things that were never meant to hold your soul. They gave you metrics, income, titles, followers, square footage, likes. They gave you symbols, the designer bag, the exotic vacation, the seat at the table, but they never gave you meaning. And so you became a well-decorated void, beautiful on the outside, hollow within. This is the modern malnourishment. Not the hunger of the body, but the starvation of the spirit. We scroll past joy. We swipe past intimacy. We binge dopamine, but starve for truth. You weren't designed to thrive on stimulation alone. You were born for depth. But depth has become a foreign land in a world that worships the surface. You know this. Deep down, you know. Because the emptiness is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's your soul rejecting the lie that performance is purpose. It's the ancient part of you, the untamed, the eternal crying out for something real. And what is real? Not the curated life, not the applause, not the endless chase. What is real is what cannot be bought. It is presence, purpose, the brutal beauty of truth, the sacred discomfort of growth, the rawness of love that doesn't fit into a caption. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And now we drown in distractions, endless consumption, achievement as addiction, busyness as avoidance. We avoid a mirror. We avoid the question, who am I without all this? But eventually, the soul rebels. Eventually, no amount of success will anesthetize the ache, because the ache is not a sign of failure, it's a doorway to what matters. And what matters is not how the world sees you, but whether you see yourself. Not who claps for you, but who would weep if your truth never found daylight. You feel empty not because you have nothing. You feel empty because you've abandoned the parts of yourself that make life worth living. The wild parts, the messy parts, the sacred questions that don't fit into your calendar or KPI. You feel empty because you've built your life around what impresses, not what ignites. And no amount of external gain can compensate for the betrayal of your inner world. This is the betrayal we are not taught to grieve. We grieve lost lovers, lost jobs, lost opportunities, but we do not grieve the self we had to bury in order to succeed. That part of you, the child who dreamed without filter, who felt everything too deeply, who didn't yet know how to lie to fit in that part, is not gone. It waits, it watches, and it's asking, will you remember me? Because the only way to fill the void is to come home to the parts you abandoned to survive. Not to fix them, to feel them, to let them breathe again. You've spent so long chasing wholeness in a world that profits off your emptiness. But the wholeness you seek is not out there. It's in the parts of you that never needed fixing, only listening. The stillness you run from holds your real power. The boredom you dread carries the messages you've drowned out. The emptiness you fear is not your enemy. It is your invitation. An invitation to remember what truly matters, to strip away the noise, to ask better questions, to stop performing and start becoming, to stop managing perception and start meeting your soul. Because no one ever lied to you more convincingly than the culture that told you success will make you feel full. It never said full of what. And now you know, full of tasks, full of noise, full of eyes watching, waiting for the next act in the endless play. But are you full of life? Are you full of truth? Are you full of something sacred enough to carry into the silence of your final breath? That is the only measure that matters, because the applause dies, the beauty fades, the empire crumbles, but the soul remains, and it remembers every truth you silenced to be accepted, every calling you ignored to be comfortable, every dream you abandoned because it didn't look realistic. It remembers, and it will keep reminding you through the emptiness, through the ache, through the gnawing whisper at 2 a.m. that you were not born for a curated life. You were born for a conscious one, a fierce one, a life that demands presence, not perfection, depth, not decoration, meaning not metrics. So what now? Now you listen, not to the world, to yourself, not to the noise, to the stillness, not to the fear, to the fire beneath it, because beneath the emptiness is not a void, it's a well. And in that well lives everything you've been too busy, too scared, too conditioned to see. But now the lie no longer works. Now you're ready to remember. And remembering is the beginning of everything. Remembering is not a return, it's a resurrection. It is the cracking open of a life once layered in masks and applause, the shattering of a persona crafted for survival rather than soul. You remember not what you were told to be, but what you are beneath it. All the spark that danced before the world told you to sit still. This is why you feel empty, despite having everything. Because what you have is not who you are. Because you mistook symbols for substance, goals for God, progress for purpose. And now, even as you win, your soul mourns. Mourns the laughter that comes without effort. Mourns the truth unspoken in rooms where performance is currency. Mourns the love that didn't demand proof. And the mourning is not weakness. It is your rebirth. You don't need more success. You need restoration. You don't need more attention. You need alignment. You don't need more followers. You need to follow your own fire. And fire, real fire, never settles. It burns clean through illusion. It doesn't care for approval. It doesn't care for trophies. It doesn't even care if it burns the life you built, if that life was built on silence. Your soul is not polite. It's feral, free, unforgiving in its call to wholeness. It will not be soothed with things. It will not be silenced with praise. It will not be seduced by shallow victories. It wants something else. It wants the raw, unfiltered, inconvenient truth. It wants you to stop pretending, to stop smiling when you are grieving, to stop celebrating what doesn't fulfill you, to stop posting light while dying in the dark. It wants your integrity back. And integrity is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about whether your life, your real life, reflects your inner truth. Not the truth they expect, not the truth that gets applause. Your truth. And the longer you live without it, the more success will taste like ash. Because the real hunger is not for more, it's for real. And real is inconvenient. It's messy. It's rarely marketable, but it's medicine. Real conversations that crack open your assumptions. Real relationships that demand your presence. Real moments of awe that make you weep in the quiet. This is the currency of a soul-fed life. And until you choose it, you will always feel like something is missing. Because something is you, not the version you've curated, not the brand you've built, not the armor you wear when the world is watching. You, the unedited, unfiltered, wildly alive force beneath the layers. You're the part of you that doesn't care how many people are watching, because it's too busy being lit from within. You who remembers the joy of creation without applause, the thrill of curiosity without comparison, the sacredness of solitude without shame. You are what's missing, and you will keep feeling empty until you stop trying to outsource your wholeness. No more waiting for permission, no more begging for validation, no more chasing enoughness in all the places that were never designed to hold it. This life, your life, begins the moment you say, enough pretending, enough performing, enough buying the lie that the next thing, the next title, the next follower, the next win will fill the void. It won't, because the void is not empty. It is sacred. It is where your soul lives when it's been exiled from your schedule. It is where your truth hides when it no longer feels safe in your story. It is where the divine whispers when the world gets too loud. So go there, not to fix it, but to listen. Listen to what you forgot when you started playing the game. Listen to what you abandoned in order to be chosen. Listen to what you were before the world told you who to be. Because that is the real everything. And once you find it, you'll realize you were never empty. You were just full of things that didn't belong. And now you're ready to return to what does. Now you're ready to return to yourself, not as a task, not as a trend, but as an act of rebellion. A sacred defiance against everything that told you your worth must be earned, that your voice must be softened, that your aliveness must be scheduled into 15-minute increments between meetings and milestones. This return is not gentle. It's primal. It's the kind of return that shatters timelines, rearranges priorities, and offends the carefully constructed narrative you once called success. It's a kind of return that reintroduces you to silence, not as an absence, but as a symphony. To solitude, not as a punishment, but as a temple. To simplicity, not as a failure, but as freedom. Because you were never meant to belong to the algorithm. You were meant to belong to the earth, to the breath, to the stillness beneath the chaos, to the pulse of truth that beats louder than applause. And once you remember this, the hunger changes. You no longer crave validation. You crave resonance. You no longer want attention, you want connection. You no longer chase more. You honor what already is. This is not detachment. This is awakening. You still work. You still strive. You still create. But not from lack, not from fear, not from the desperate need to outrun your own emptiness. You create from fullness, from the overflow of being connected to something real, from the fire of knowing who you are, regardless of who's watching, because you've stopped performing. And you've started living. And in that living, you discover the most radical truth of all. You were always enough, even in your stillness, even in your uncertainty, even in your mess, especially in your mess. You are not the persona. You are the pulse. You are not the brand. You are the breath. You are not the echo of what the world expects. You are the original sound. And no one else can give you to yourself. No one else can reclaim the soul you abandoned in pursuit of being seen. Only you can do that. And the moment you do, the emptiness loses its grip, because the emptiness was never the enemy. It was the call, the divine alarm clock ringing through your success, your routine, your distractions, asking, begging, will you come back to life? Not the life that fits the mold, not the life that wins approval, the life that feels like fire in your chest and wind in your veins and thunder in your bones, the life that wakes you up in the middle of the night with visions that don't make sense to anyone but you, The life that requires your truth, not your polish. That demands your presence, not your perfection. That invites your essence, not your strategy. Because the world has enough content. What it's starving for is contact. Contact with the real. With people who have stopped pretending, who have stopped needing to be envied, who are willing to be known. Instead, this is your turning point. Not because something is broken, but because something is finally rising. Something that says, I no longer want to feel full of everything except myself. I want my soul back. I want my wonder back. I want the feeling of being rooted in something deeper than performance, deeper than pressure, deeper than this relentless pursuit of enough. I want the truth. And the truth is this. Your life doesn't need to be louder. It needs to be real. And real is what you've been aching for all along. Real is what the soul has always spoken, even while the ego shouted over it. Real is the feeling you get when your breath matches your heartbeat, when you sit alone in a room and don't feel the need to escape yourself. Real is not a destination, it is a frequency. It's what hums beneath every contrived identity, every accolade, every mask. And the tragedy? Most people never hear it. Not because it isn't speaking, but because they've filled their lives with so much noise, they've forgotten what silence feels like. They mistake stimulation for aliveness. They mistake approval for belonging. They mistake busy for important. But you are beginning to remember. And once you remember, you cannot go back. You can't unknow the emptiness that success failed to fill. You can't unsee the places where your truth was traded for comfort. You can't unfeel the hollowness of applause when your heart isn't in it. This remembering is not romantic. It's raw. It strips you bare. It asks you to face the very systems you've built your life around and say, this is not working. Not for my soul. Not for my truth. Not for the man or woman I'm becoming. And the world may not understand. It will tell you you're ungrateful. It will tell you to keep going, to keep optimizing, keep performing, keep producing. Because your awakening threatens the very economy of self-denial. But your emptiness is not ungratefulness. It's evidence. Evidence that the soul cannot be bribed. That meaning cannot be bought. That fulfillment is not found in the shallow waters of convenience, but in the deep ocean of inner truth. And that ocean, it's been calling you. It called you in the burnout. It called you in the late nights, where the silence felt unbearable. It called you in the achievements that left you strangely numb. It called you in the perfect life that somehow felt like a cage. It's been calling you not away from success, but towards something richer. Wholeness, congruence, a life where what you say matches what you feel, where what you do aligns with who you are, where you no longer have to fracture yourself to be seen. That is the only life worth building. And it starts now. Not with a 10-step plan, not with a viral code, but with one honest moment. A moment where you stop, where you look your reflection in the eye, not with criticism, not with judgment, but with clarity. And you ask, what parts of me have I silenced? What dreams did I abandon for the illusion of security? What truth have I buried beneath the weight of being impressive? And when you hear the answer, when your soul finally speaks louder than your schedule, listen. Because that voice, it's yours. It's always been yours. And it holds the map not just to success, but to freedom. Not just to achievement, but to aliveness. Not just to admiration, but to self-respect. You don't need another goal. You need your center. You don't need to be more. You need to be whole. Because a life built from the outside in will always collapse under the weight of its own performance. But a life built from the inside out, that life can burn down and still rise. That life doesn't just look good, It feels like home. And that, more than anything, is what you've been looking for. Home. Not a place, not a house, not a lifestyle, but a state of being. Home is when your nervous system exhales in your own presence. Home is when your values no longer contradict your actions. Home is when you can sit with your truth without flinching. And the reason you feel empty despite having everything is because you build a house without building a home. You assembled the materials of status and success, but forgot the architecture of meaning. You painted the walls with ambition, but never laid the foundation of self-understanding. The world applauded, but applause is not intimacy. They called you inspiring. But admiration is not nourishment. You were seen but not known, loved but not understood, desired but not held in your wholeness. Because how could they hold you if you never revealed the truth of who you are? That is the tragedy of the empty life, not that it lacks luxury, but that it lacks you. You in your fury and freedom. You in your sacred wildness. You not as a performance, but as a presence. To reclaim that presence, you must grieve. Grieve the years you lost to being impressive. Grieve the dreams you sacrificed to be stable. Grieve the parts of you that were silenced to stay palatable. This grief is holy. Do not rush it. Do not mask it. Let it rise. Let it rage. Let it burn through every lie you once called identity. Because it is only after the grief that clarity arrives. And when it does, when the ashes cool and the silence settles, something ancient awakens, something unbothered by the external, something eternal. It's your essence, the part of you that has watched patiently as you chased every metric but ignored your soul, the part of you that cannot be commodified, that doesn't care how many followers you have, how many goals you've achieved, or how many people envy your life. It only wants to know, are you alive? Not busy, not successful, alive. Because real life, the kind that fills you instead of drains you, isn't found in the places they told you to look. It's found in the depths you were told to avoid, in the truth you feared would cost you everything, in the wild, terrifying, exquisite moment where you stop asking what the world wants from you and start asking what your soul longs for. And maybe, just maybe, your soul doesn't want more. Maybe it wants less. Less noise, less performance, less pressure to be anything other than deeply human. Maybe it wants peace not as a productivity hack, but as a birthright. Maybe it wants space not to escape, but to remember. Maybe it wants love the kind that doesn't require you to shrink or shine just to be. Because when you are loved in your stillness, in your quiet, in your undoing, in your truth, the emptiness begins to dissolve. Not all at once, but breath by breath, choice by choice. And you begin to feel it, not a rush, not a high, something better, wholeness. The kind that cannot be taken, the kind that doesn't need to be proven, the kind that lives quietly in your chest and says, I am here, I am enough, I am home. That is why you felt empty. Not because you failed, but because you followed the world and forgot your way back to yourself. Now you remember. Now you rise, not as an idea, as a truth, not as a brand, as a being, not as a mask, as the unshakable, unnameable, unbreakable you beneath it all. This is the beginning. This is your return. So now, there is only one thing left to do. Stop searching. Not because there's nothing left to find, but because what you were looking for was never out there. It was always you. You, without the noise. You, beneath the roles. You, before the world convinced you to become something more acceptable than alive. All this time, the emptiness was not a punishment. It was a compass. It was your soul, pointing you back to where you left yourself. Back to the first moment you said yes when you meant no. Back to the first time you smiled to be safe, not seen. Back to when you began trading your essence for applause. But now, the trade ends. Now you choose truth, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. You let the world keep its definitions of success, of happiness, of enough. You've outgrown them, because no number, no title, no spotlight can define the worth of someone who is whole. You are no longer chasing a life that looks good. You are now choosing one that feels right. You are no longer starving at the banquet of false promises. You are finally feeding your soul with silence, with presence, with truth. And when the world asks why you walked away from the noise, you will smile, not to impress, but because you are free. Free to live a life that doesn't require you to disappear in order to be loved. Free to feel fully, deeply, without apology. Free to be not perfect, but present. Free to be home, not somewhere, not someday, but here within yourself. You no longer fear the emptiness. You understand now it was never a void. It was the sacred space your soul needed to be heard again. And now it sings, not to be noticed, to be known, not by them, by you. And that, finally, is everything.